Oh, what is up, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Shooting the Shit Uncensored. And guys, I am over the moon to have my next guest on. I've been trying to get this dude on for fucking months, and I'm so excited to have him on today. But before we get into Mr. Alex Cologne, let's get in and thank some of our amazing sponsors. First up is A-Rock Design. So A-Rock Designs are the company that make all those cool wrestling cups, t-shirts, hoodies, keychains, you name it, they make it. They made me this beautiful CM Punk custom tumbler, which I absolutely love. They do stuff which isn't always wrestling related. Head over and speak to Ashley Rodriguez from A-Rock Designs, and she will give you an amazing deal. Next up is Signal Studios. Now, if you're an independent professional wrestler, you need some new entrance music, you need to hit up my boy Rafi Tomasian from Signal Studios in Sydney, Australia. He can make you a track, send it out anywhere in the world. If you're a band looking for a rehearsal space, they have the perfect spot for you. You can go down there, check it out. You can feel comfortable doing what you do. Now, my next sponsor, which I don't have an image for yet, is WASAF Championship Belts. Every wrestling fan in the world either owns a championship belt or wants to own a championship belt. If you would like to get your hands on a replica championship of your favorite title or a custom championship, hit up me and I'll point you in the right direction and get your hands on a nice championship belt. Also, guys, if you'd like to support this podcast that little bit more, head over to prowrestlingtees.com/MWA World and get your hands on some of our awesome merchandise over there, guys. But without further ado, I'm going to bring him out, the man, the myth, the legend, Alex Cologne. Alex, what's up, buddy?
Not much, man. What's going on with you?
Man, not a great deal, bro. Just living the dream here in Sydney, Australia, man. It's a real honor to have you on. And as I said, I've been wanting to have you on for quite some time, man. And it's been a crazy time in the world with everything that's been going on with COVID and all that sort of stuff. And man, how have you been holding up with it all, bro?
It's okay. You know what I mean? Like everyone's going through rough spots, so we're just trying to make it into the clear. So that's just how I see it. It's cloudy days, just trying to make it into a clear day.
Man, 2020 has been a really shitty year. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened. We're talking backstage about it. A lot of legends from CZW or a few legends from CZW have since passed. And like I said, we don't want to sort of, bring up some sad stuff to talk about, but it's been a crazy year, man, for the world of wrestling as well as the world in general with COVID. Getting into training. So you started training at the CZW training school with DJ and John Dharma, correct?
I actually started training 2 months prior to that with Tommy Cairo. He's a old school guy within the Jersey area. He was known for his ECW stuff he did. He also did like 1 or 2 tours of UWF in Japan. I started training with him, but my initial intention was to train with CZW. So once the CZW school opened up 2 months later, I ended up leaving that school for a CZW school.
That's crazy, man. And when did you decide that pro wrestling was something that you wanted to, chase as a career and make that your profession and what you wanted to do for a living? When did that sort of happen for you?
Probably towards the end of high school. It's when I started to get back into watching CZW, and I really found the indies. Up until that point, like around 2004, that's how old I am. I'm old fuck, but like 2004, I found my way back into watching indie wrestling because I hadn't really seen anything since 2000. I caught CZW on their like local TV thing they were doing out my way, so that's how I would see CZW. And then I fell away from it and stopped really watching wrestling in general in the mid 2000s. And around 2004, when I was getting ready to graduate high school, I ended up going to one of the Cage of Deaths, and I just fell in love with it again and decided this might be something I want to do.
And you mentioned CZW. Were you always a fan of that style, of that deathmatch wrestling, or was it more of the high-flying, best of the best type guys that attracted you to that company?
That company, it was the deathmatch stuff. In general, I liked every style of wrestling. At that point, I was really big into the juniors, but like what brought me into CZW as a fan and eventually, obviously, as a wrestler at the start was the deathmatch stuff.
Yeah, and how did you find like going to the CZW school and training with guys? You mentioned Tommy Cairo, who is an ECW original,
Mhm.
and known in the Jersey area. How did you find when you first went into the CZW school? Were you a little bit sort of like, holy shit, this is where I've wanted to be for so long, or was it like a perfect fit going in, where you just sort of blended straight into that school?
Well, what happened was me and a bunch of my friends were we were backyard wrestlers. And this, I found backyard wrestling actually around the end of high school. So like even after high school, it was weird. I'm like, I'm out of high school. Why am I backyard wrestling? This is something you do when you're in like middle school. But I don't know what it was, but we just got into it. And it was like me, Joe Gacy, Lindsay Dorado, Ophidian. There's a tons of guys who are on the indies or were on the indies we backyarded with. So one of the guys actually worked with Lobo of CZW fame and told him about
Oh,
our backyard fed, and they had a conversation. He mentioned that Zandig was reopening up the CZW school because at the time it was Chikara and CZW, but they had a
yeah.
falling out, so CZW was looking to do their own thing, and he brought it up to him, and our friend who was also backyarding with us said, "Hey, you should come to our backyard show." And Lobo showed up to one of our backyard shows, and he thought it was fun or whatever, and ended up talking us into going to the CZW school. So while we were waiting for the CZW school to open up because they were trying to find a building and do all that stuff, I ended up meeting Tommy Cairo through a mutual friend, and he offered to start training me. So I decided to hop on that right away. I did that for about 2 months. We had a little bit of a falling out. I don't think he was too happy, obviously, that I left for the CZW school. But I went to the CZW school when they started because obviously I was with someone else. And I had a talk with Zandig after the training session because I joined them during their training session. And he basically asked me what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be in CZW. So I essentially left one school for that school. And that's where it all started.
That's crazy, man. Like coming in contact with someone like Lobo, who, for those who don't know, Lobo was one of the early stars of CZW, and really built the foundation of CZW. His
Mm-hmm.
career was very, very short, obviously, and any old school deathmatch wrestling fans or CZW fans would know, like the punishment that he took was just
Yep.
like on another level.
Yeah.
Like this guy was a
Yeah.
crazy motherfucker. As a deathmatch fan and as a CZW fan, you would have been marking the fuck out. Like you're performing in front of like someone like Lobo. But has he been someone who has been influential in your career? Like, have you kept a relationship with him throughout, starting your training with CZW?
We've kind of fallen away. Like he came back into the company when we first started training. He ended up back in the company for I think a year and a half or two or something like that. And he did some small stuff with them, but then he ended up leaving the company again, doing his own thing because obviously he had a family and stuff. So I didn't really talk to him after that too much, but like the little conversations we had here and there really helped me out. He was a super nice guy. He wasn't really I don't know how you say sunken into the business like a lot of guys are where they'll give you advice. Sorry, that was probably my daughter. Where they'll
That's
give you
okay.
advice or like they'll have things to say. He was just always seemed like somebody who just wanted to be there and enjoy his time there and shoot the shit with the boys while he was there. And then obviously when John Zandig needed him to do something like off the spur of the moment, he'd always be there to be like he'll hop in. And that seemed, honestly, that seemed like something that a lot of those guys were doing for John. It's like his original guys were always willing to step in if he needed them. The same thing happened to Wife Beater. I'm sure we could get to that at
Yeah.
some point, but like it seemed like if Zandig was always in a bind, like the originals would just be hanging out and they'd be like, all right, well, let me go grab something, put something on to go out there and wrestle for you.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like you just saw like that strong loyalty of the bond from that early onset from CCW and the teams, and over the years you've seen that there where like a lot of the guys who wrestle for CCW, there's so much passion there for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that over the years it has slowly started to dwindle away. Like it's CZW was so hot for many, many years, and then probably the more recent years, and it's not a thing on the boys. I don't know if it comes down to booking or what the backstage environment is. Like I said, I've never been backstage at a CZW show, but I think it's just over the years you've seen the energy drop out of that promotion, and
Yeah.
I'd really like to see it boost back up, because they are known for having some of the most passionate fans in the world.
Dude, it was, man, and I was there in the thick of things. So it was literally a mixture of everything. Because when I came in, Zandig was like he was pretty much heavily a part of the process there. But I think he was like starting to like just see himself out the door. I think obviously just him being injured and him having to step in sometimes. And then the money, money's always an issue with every wrestling promotion. So, he would show up to the shows not like kind of late. Anytime he'd show up early, it was because something big was happening. But he'd have help with Maven, and DJ would really help out a lot. And at that time, they were really good with the ideas. So a lot of good ideas actually came from them during that time. And I don't know. I just think when he was ready to check out and he pretty much sold the company to DJ to some form, DJ wanted to kind of turn a profit because CZW was kind of in the dumps money-wise. And, you know how it is when you're trying to turn a profit, it's not about friendships, it's about business. So like the loyalty thing kind of dwindled on a lot of the guys who like us, who seen John as the father, and we understood that he had our back with everything. And the whole thing kind of turned around, and that's where you see CZW now. It's kind of, it was a loyalty thing and just a trust thing. And I have nothing against DJ. I think he's a wonderful human being outside of wrestling. It's just, as a promoter, as a wrestler, whatever you want to say, sometimes he says some things his mouth can't cash. So it is what it is.
Yeah, man. And I think as a promoter, it's always the easiest person to blame. It's always it's always the easiest person to point the finger at. And I've heard, look, I've never met DJ. I've never spoken with DJ. I've heard, mixed stories about him. Some people love him, some people not so much. I've messaged him here and there, and we've had conversations like that. And he seems like he's a very nice human being and a very nice guy. But, in the professional wrestling world, being a nice guy and being a great human being isn't really what's going to make you the most money. But getting back into your training, when you made your debut in 2007, very, very early on, you were tagged up with Joe Gacy.
Yeah.
Joe Gacy's one of the guys. He's another one, much like you, one of the hottest guys on the indie circuit today. And how did that tag team come about? Because you guys were both training at the same time, I believe, or it was like around that same time.
I think they were just trying to split everybody up into different things. I'm not really reminiscent on how exactly it happened. I just think they were like, hey, we're just gonna have one of you guys be a single, because it was me, him, and LJ Cruz. And I think they felt like LJ was kind of more marketable in the junior division as a singles, and somehow me and Joe ended up getting paired together, which wasn't a problem because we pretty much traveled together and trained together all the time. Multiple nights a week we were at training together, so we were pretty much joined to the hip. So I mean, that's pretty much how that whole thing started. There was no really rhyme or reason, it just kind of worked out that way.
And when tagging with Joe, how was the matches put together? Like, were you guys working a lot together about it? You mentioned that you guys were very close, traveling the shows, going to training together. When you were sitting down putting matches together, how easy was it for you and your opponents, working with Joe and obviously going on and working with other guys in the tag division? But how's your putting the matches together? How did you guys obviously go about doing that? Like, was one person more putting it all together and you were going back and forth?
I think at that time we were so fresh into the business that more so the other teams, which were the veteran teams, were putting a lot of the matches together for us, and we were just adding our stuff in there. I mean, gelling wise, me and Joe were really close as friends, and we still are. We'll talk every now and then, and it'll just be like old times. But I think like wrestling wise, we kind of have two different philosophies on certain things. So I'd kind of be like the rambunctious, like trying to do everything at that time. And then Joe would kind of be like, let's tone it back and be more for the TVs. So we had a difference in style. We really didn't gel that much tag team wise, but like, as person to person, we were like brothers.
And I think that really shows in the world of pro wrestling, is sometimes you guys can be the best of friends outside the ring and really tight, but when it gets into have a match against each other or a match with each other in a tag team, sometimes it cannot work out that way because you've got different ideas and different perspectives on how the business should be done and how the match should be portrayed. Is that something that you'd agree on, or am I off the mark?
No, not every, like I always tell, because I tell the young guys all the time, because everybody's trying to go out there and have the next smash match. It's like, it's not always, you need certain people that you can dance with properly. Like, not everybody's gonna have the perfect dance steps with you. Some people are just gonna be left-footed. You're not gonna, you know what I mean? You're just not gonna gel right with every single person. Everything's not gonna go exactly how you assume it is. So that's just the way of the world, man. Not everything gels together. It's not meant to. Like, some things work, some things don't.
And breaking into deathmatch wrestling, when you decided to sort of, deathmatch wrestling is what sort of attracted you into the CZW style. When was it that deathmatch wrestling for you was something that you wanted to try your hand at and really try and see, if you could hang in that world?
Well, I wanted to come in doing death matches initially, because when we were in the backyard, I was the guy trying to do light tube spots and all types of stuff, jumping off of sheds and doing really dumb shit. But like, once we got into the swing of training, my whole mind frame changed, and I wanted to focus more on the wrestling aspect. So, as you know, I kind of stayed away from it for a really long time, probably close to 10 years. I did one or two. I did one with Danny Havoc, and that's where like that whole bug kind of restarted. So when things kind of went south for me with CZW, kind of in the backstage area, and then with DJ, and then being out the ring, things weren't just gelling with me. So I kind of got pushed to the side a little bit, and I was almost pretty much close to quitting. And Danny Havoc just started talking to me out of nowhere, and he kind of got me back into it and said, "Hey, why don't you try doing death matches, or take a step into doing death matches, or at least give it a try?" So and we had a hardcore match around 2011, I think it was, before that, and he thought it was really good and thought I had something to offer in that genre. So when I was on my way out, he kind of pulled me back in and said, "Hey, give it one more try." So I don't know if it was a year or 2 years, or it was around 4 years after that, or 3 years or something. Night of Infamy, the same show we had a match against each other at. We had a light tube match, and it went really well. Like, everybody was really hyped up, and they were like, "We didn't know you could do that. We didn't know you had that in you." Danny Havoc was really happy about it. I think that was one of his favorite matches up to that point, because after that we had a bunch of matches. He was like, "It just didn't feel like the first one." It's like, it's not always, you know what I mean? We still gelled well together, but at that point, it wasn't gonna feel like that. And he kind of pulled me in, dude. And after that first light tube match, me and him, we were obviously getting closer and being more friends, and he kind of pulled me into that genre. I started kind of leaning more towards doing death matches after that.
And how did you find like the deathmatch style of it and going into it? Like, what was the mindset going into that first deathmatch? Do you remember sort of before the show, like, how were you feeling? Was it like having your first wrestling match all over again almost?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's nerve wracking. It's just because light tubes are so unpredictable. I think sometimes people downplay light tubes because they think it doesn't hurt that much. Not till you're breaking about 100 to 300 of them on you.
Exactly.
And I was real nervous, and just nervous about how badly hurt I could get. But once you really get into there and you're in the ring and things are going, like, you're not really thinking about that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the adrenaline really kicks in once you're in front of that crowd. And like I said, I've never had a death match in my life, so I'm
Don't.
only going off what I could assume. And assumption would be like, once that adrenaline gets pumping, you probably wouldn't be feeling it till like after the match. And
Oh yeah. Oof.
I've spoken to a few deathmatch guys. It's like, "Oh yeah," you come back and it's like, "Oh, I've got a massive hole in my arm," and it's just like, there's the bone, So it must be crazy. But what for deathmatch wrestling, I always sort of look at it, and as we we're talking before the show, I've had a massive appreciation for it. But for me, the background of why people get into deathmatch wrestling, and was what's the reasoning behind you wanting to do deathmatch wrestling? You're one of the best that do it in the world, but what is it that drew you into wanting to be a deathmatch wrestler?
You know what? I don't really know how much of an answer I have for that. In the early 2000s, I caught the CZW commercials on local TV, and I seen them hitting each other with glass light tubes. I'm like, what the, this shit is crazy. There's something about it. It was an adrenaline rush. And then I ended up going to those Cage of Deaths. Like I went to 2 Cage of Deaths back to back with some of my friends, and it just blew my mind, dude. I was like, something says I have to do this or try this. And obviously I fell out of it. And when I got back into it and I really started getting steamrolling after that Danny Havoc match, it was kind of like, all right, I've tried doing this whole be a junior heavyweight. You know, I tried to figure out how to be more of a character, and I felt like at that time none of it was working for me. I've gotten things to that point. CZW gave me a lot of opportunities, winning Best of the Best and the Wire title, all this other stuff, and the crowd wasn't like, they weren't buying into me. You know what I mean? And the deathmatch stuff felt like it was kind of like, if this doesn't work for me, then it's not meant to be, and I just need to walk away. And for my sake, it actually worked for me. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned Danny Havoc, as being someone very influential in your career, and you someone you've been very close with. How much of an asset was Danny Havoc in the early stages of you breaking into deathmatch wrestling? I mean, was he helping you with ideas of putting matches together? And obviously, you had a couple of your earlier death matches with him as well. In going into matches when you're against other people, was he always someone who was supportive of you in that role of sort of saying, okay, this is what I think you can do? Or did he pretty much give you a little bit of guidance and let you go and figure it out?
He pretty much gave me guidance as into when it comes to safety stuff. Like he was very instrumental in letting me know what's safe to do, what's kind of not safe to do, because I'd always shoot ideas to him. But when it came to the idea department, I think I had so many ideas up to that moment. Like I had tons of ideas. Strangely, I kind of fell into things properly. So he really didn't stroke my whole brain waves that way. It was kind of like he was like, I know Alex knows what to do. I'm gonna let him do what he wants to do, but it's like I'm gonna throw things here and there, like, hey, maybe do it this way or do this, do that, to kind of keep me safer in that environment.
Yeah, man. Like that's the thing is like, people think, and people deathmatch wrestling fans think that deathmatch wrestling is just like hitting each other with light tubes falling in barbed wire, and it really isn't. And deathmatch wrestling really is an art form of being able, and pro wrestling is making it look like you're killing the other person when you're really protecting them, taking care of them. And people who watch deathmatch wrestling, they legit think that wrestling match is a real match sometimes. But the importance of keeping your opponent safe, like if you can, and I think to be a good deathmatch wrestler, you really need to be a good worker and a good performer in ring, that then who can then facilitate and bring in the gimmicks and stuff like that, and for you building up a death match, it's not just, okay, get in there and start whacking each other with all types of different shit. It's about getting in there and telling a story.
Yeah.
How would you put a death match together, like yourself? Like if you're going into, say, it's going to be an end of a major feud, there's going to be an expectation of high level of violence, but you don't want to jump straight into it. How do you build that match?
There's honestly there's a different psychology for everything. I'm trying to think of specific matches where I could explain it better, because there's no specific story. Like the one thing I always tell the younger guys is like, don't overcomplicate stuff, because as you see in a lot of indie matches, a lot of superstar matches, a lot of guys, they cram a lot of stuff in really a small bag. You can't do that with death matches because you're already using weapons, so you're trying to maximize the most out of that weapon. So when that weapon's being used, all the noise, the effect, like that's what the crowd wants to see. They're not paying more attention to what they would do in a normal match with, where your hands are adjusted on roll-ups and rolling people through, doing all these crazy spots. So it's like keeping it simple in a death match, I always feel is 100% better than trying to wrestle it almost like a regular match. The simpler, the better. You want to tell a simple story. Things sometimes can get convoluted, and you'll be able to tell when you watch some death matches now when guys are they're trying a little bit too much. It's like, it's cleaner if it's simpler. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Like it's just got to, keep it basic and then work it towards, the weapons in a slow sort of form of doing it. So, but going into like deathmatch tournaments and shit like that, like because everyone says like going into a pro wrestling match is like having a mini car accident, and deathmatch wrestling would be like having a fucking massive head-on collision if that's the way we're going to do
bad.
it.
It gets bad sometimes, man.
Dude, I like, watching, deathmatch tournaments. I sit there and just think, like, man, how much does this take out on your body? And when you're doing, like, if you're going to go to the final of a deathmatch tournament, you're wrestling 3 times that night in one of the most violent styles of professional wrestling. Does the mindset change when you're going into a tournament style deathmatch, like a deathmatch tournament, as opposed to just going into a one match?
Yeah. And if honestly, it falls like that with regular tournaments as well. You have to know how to space out your energy. And that's a problem I had with the past TOS. I didn't space out my energy enough because obviously the first round I had Schlack, which is a huge match. So we had the mindset of going in there and not spacing out anything. And that was a mistake made on my part because I obviously had to go all the way to the finals. But normally you would try to space things out and make sure you have enough energy reserved, because in a deathmatch tournament, your adrenaline's going up in like a regular match, but when it comes down, the way you feel compared to a regular tournament is like, oh, it's 100% worse, man, because you're feeling all the cuts anytime you hit the mat after that first round, because your adrenaline dumps in. Like, oh, it's very painful, and you're just completely exhausted.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Have, like, you mentioned the tournament of survival that you just went through, which I just finished watching last night, and congratulations, by the way, for
Thank you.
going all the way to the and taking that tournament. But and you mentioned guys like Schlack. Schlack is probably one of the most craziest motherfuckers I've seen. Like, he's got kill tattooed on his neck. He's quite an intimidating guy. But like going in and having those matches and having those adrenaline dumps at the end of a tournament, how are you feeling, like, mentally and emotionally, like, and physically?
Horrible, bad. And some people would attest to say, because when you're in the shower, a after deathmatch shower is probably one of the worst pains you'll ever feel in your life. And then adding a tournament on top of that, I was literally screaming so loud, I'm pretty sure people were hearing me down the hall. It was very painful, very painful.
Oh man, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy, dude. And you know, for you, with everything that you've done in your career, who's left out there in the deathmatch world that you would really like to get in the ring and chop it up with?
I've chopped it up with almost everybody, man. That's always the test. I still have Clint Margera, somebody I've been wanting to get in the ring with. We know each other. We're cool. We tried to make it happen. It kind of fell through twice. So, and the COVID stuff's kind of putting a damper on everything. So I'm hoping at some point, if something gets lifted, I could go to England or he could come here and we can make something happen at least once before one of us decides to completely hang it up 100%. But other than that, man, I've wrestled. To me, I've wrestled the best in Japan. I've wrestled the best in the US. So I mean, I don't know, man. I just think I've pretty much done everything I can think of, other than wrestle Clint. And then I also said recently I made a new goal where I wanted to wrestle for the Freedoms title in Japan or here. So that's a new goal to kind of keep me going for another couple years.
Yeah, man, no, absolutely. Freedoms is a great promotion over there, man. They do a lot of great stuff. How do you find the differences between wrestling in Japan and America? Like, everyone knows that the Japanese fans are very silent and respectful. Does that throw you when you're wrestling over there?
I don't think so. To me, I think I've been watching Japanese wrestling for so long, I already expected it the minute I went over there. But for the GCW shows in Japan, the crowd was actually like reversed. They were actually pretty loud during the match. And then when we wrestled like Corkin and stuff, they were silent. But I don't think that didn't really bother me too much. Probably because I expected it, if anything.
Yeah, fair enough. You knew that they were going to be a little bit silent, and I
Yeah,
did see clips of the Japanese show, and I was quite surprised how loud that crowd got. I was like, "Wow!"
yeah.
Like,
Dude, I
that
was
was a
the same
few
way.
GCW chants. I was like, "What the fuck?" But
Yeah.
I think that's a way. Like, I think it's like how society has changed, and I think it's probably changed over in Japan as well, where they probably think, okay, we're known as being silent crowds. We need to sort of get behind these guys and really sort of light a fire under them and let them know we appreciate this shit.
Yeah, it's definitely the
Especially when it
younger
comes.
generation in Japan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And early on in your career in CZW, or a couple of years in, you were teamed up with Blackout. with
Yeah.
Ruckus and Robbie
Yeah.
Marino and Chrissy. I've had the honor of interviewing Ruckus and also G's as well. And man, Blackout is one of those factions. They've been around for so long, man, on the indies, and it's like they've been consistent as well. How did joining Blackout come to fruition? Because you and Rich Swan, I believe, after a match, they came out and offered you guys both a spot in the Blackout.
Yeah, I think it was around a time where Eddie was on his way out, and Joker wasn't really wrestling as much. So like Ruckus and G's were. I don't know if G's was completely on his own, but I know Ruckus was kind of falling alone in that scenario. So it just seemed like a perfect fit because we were both kind of coming up pretty fast, me and Rich Swan. And it just honestly just seemed like a perfect fit at the time. And I think the company decided to kind of go that route. Or maybe Sami Callihan convinced them. I don't really remember, but it went that route. And it was a lot of good lessons I learned and a lot of things I learned along that way because Ruckus has been around forever, and I was watching him when he was a big dude doing cartwheel handspring elbows and stuff. So like it was definitely he was definitely a great teacher in that avenue.
Yeah, dude, like Ruckus is a great guy, and definitely someone who, any young talent who's, a couple years into the business can really learn a lot from. One of those guys who never really got his big opportunity in the main stages where he could have very easily fit into that. But with Ruckus, were there things that you walked away learning from that, how to put matches, making things fit in certain matches, or was it at that stage you felt pretty comfortable in doing that and on your way?
Yeah, I think the nerves kind of went away from working with him because there'd be times where he would be running late. So and at the very beginning, it would get super stressful because it'd be like, oh, he's not here yet, and then he'd be walking in as our music would be hitting. So it's like I automatically I kind of had to sink or swim. So I learned to kind of not get so nervous in between matches and understand if something goes wrong, you can always pick it up and keep going. Things like that, just really small things, and he would always give me advice on certain situations. But other than that, he really helped out when it came to the nerves department. I think that was more because he would show up 2 minutes before a match. It's good stuff.
That would be the most frustrating thing, though. Like you've got this big angle happening, and then next thing you know, your partner or your faction members are turning up just before the match. Did that make you nervous before going into matches and stuff? Like, were you worried?
At the very beginning, but once I kind of, because when you start tagging with someone or in a faction with people, you kind of learn their movesets. And I tell people that all the time. I'm like, your best bet is to always study your opponent and study your friends, because you kind of want to always have an idea what these people do, because in case something goes wrong, you're kind of there to pick up the pieces. So with Ruckus, it was the same way. I kind of knew all the stuff he did. I kind of knew where he was placed at inside the ring and where he would get all his stuff off. So it was very easy for me to be like, hey, this is what he does. Be on the lookout. And then he'd come in 2 minutes, and then when our music our music would be hitting, I'd be like, hey, this is what's going on. Blah 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 blah. Let's get out there and do it. And then we'd get out there and do it.
That's crazy, man. And, going into, you were quite fortunate enough to be booked to win Best of the Best in 2013, I believe it was.
Yeah.
How did when did you find out you were going to win that tournament? Because it's one of those tournaments, which is probably one of the most prestigious tournaments on the indies.
Yeah. I think I had a good rapport with a lot of guys in the back. And I think a lot of people were just pushing for me, because at that time, AR Fox was really huge. So I think they were pushing for AR Fox to win at one point. And then I know when we came back from Germany, they were pushing for John Gresham to win. And I think everybody just kind of had my back. I was a company guy. I was actually having good matches with all these guys at that moment. So to them, it just seemed like the right move to make, to put over the guy that was the company guy, because it's always a sure bet.
Oh, absolutely. That's the guy that's going to be around for a long time, and that's the guy that's going to move forward. But what did it mean to you winning that tournament?
Oh, everything. The Best of the Best was one of the goals on my wrestling list, because I always had about 3 goals, which was win the secondary title, which I did, win the Wire title. Unfortunately, it wasn't the Iron Man title. And then Best of the Best was another goal, and Japan was my third goal. So I pretty much accomplished all my initial wrestling goals, and Best of the Best was one of the bigger ones. So it was a huge deal. Even though knowing you're gonna win, it really doesn't hit you till after you win. And then I win, and we do the whole bit, and I'm getting all this heat from the crowd. And then I go to the back, and the first person I see is Adam Cole. He gives me a hug and thanks me, and then we're in the locker room just chopping it up with everybody, and it was awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of wrestling fans, they lose sight of, yes, wrestling is a predetermined outcome. They know who the winners are, they know who the losers are going into it, but it's still, to win a tournament like that or to win any championship in pro wrestling means that the company is really getting behind that person.
Yeah.
And it is a victory for the wrestler, even though it's, they haven't gone out and literally beat someone's ass to win a tournament or win a belt. It's still an accomplishment for that wrestler. It's them saying, okay, we acknowledge this guy as someone that we can invest in, someone who's going to be around long term. And that's where my mindset is. Like, I really feel glad when I see someone who's going to win a tournament or win a championship that's really been busting their ass, because it finally means they're getting that recognition. It's like when someone wins an award for best actor or best supporting, you know what I mean? Something like that. It's acknowledging the hard work that they've put in. And I think people lose sight of that, especially wrestling fans.
Well, nowadays when it comes to attention spans and everybody's kind of in a certain mindset, it's like people let stuff shrug off their shoulders. Me winning Best of the Best meant a lot to me, because the first CZW commercial / fake UTV I watched was one that was on the first Best of the Best. And even before that, I seen a commercial advertising them because Juventud Guerrero was supposed to be there, and I wanted to go so bad. And at the time, I lived in Jersey. I didn't even know where Sewell was. I was like, I want to go to the show. Like, I want to see these guys go ham. But just even then, I felt like it gave me a tie to the tournament. And I felt like when that became a goal of mine, it was for a reason. It wasn't just because it was handed to me. And I don't feel like it should be like that with anybody. Like, that you win a tournament, it should mean something to you, or at least while you're in the process of doing that and you're having to wrestle all these talented people, like, you should grow some appreciation for what's eventually going to happen, because it'll always be something that'll stick with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's the main point, is like, you look at accomplishments in wrestling and to be able to accomplish something like that, where you've been able to come up from, that's where you wanted to go. You wanted to be one of the guys that could be taken seriously in that company. And I really think that, Best of the Best was really the turning point, and really the starting of saying, okay, eyes on Alex Colon. Let's see what he can do. And over the years, it's definitely been the case. I've been a huge fan of yours from the get-go, not to blow smoke up your ass, but, I've really had an appreciation of what you do, because you're one of those guys that can go in and go, oh, you need a deathmatch wrestler? Cool, I can do that. You need someone who can, fly around with a luchador? I can do that. You need mat wrestler? I can do that. You hit all those parts of the wrestling buffet that you can sit there and be put into any situation and make it work and make it good. And that's the difference between, some wrestlers who say, oh, I can do this, but I can't do this. You can kind of fall into any one of those genres and have a great match. And that in itself is a hard thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's why things have worked out so well, because of just my experience with all these different styles and all these different people, because, I've been around a lot longer than a lot of guys that are in the deathmatch scene right now. So they don't have the experience I have. So it's like, it's not a shock to me why I can have a good match with Seek LePay one night, and then I could go and wrestle Takeda another night and have a good match with him. It's just, I have an understanding of all these different styles and kind of their style as well. I'm just a student of the game, man. And I tell the young guys all the time, it's like, study, learn, because if you shut off one avenue, eventually you're going to have to walk down that street at some point. And if you don't know where you're at, you're going to get lost.
Oh, absolutely, man. And it's so important to be able to do that, because it makes you more valuable to a company as well, that you can go into any particular area and really, step into that sort of genre. But going back to CZW, I should say, you haven't been there for a little while. It's been a couple of years since you've wrestled there. What was the reason? Was it just the time that for you to move on to somewhere else, or was there something that sort of really stopped you wanting to sort of go back there? Where did the divide come with you and CZW, if there was one?
Well, when I came, Danny Havoc brought me back. We had that match, and DJ, Maven, the Office, they were ramping about it. They were talking about it like, yeah, we're gonna bring you back, this and that, and it kind of fizzled really fast. I got forgotten about really fast, and then I would come back sporadically, and then I would be forgotten about. And Danny Havoc would constantly be on them, like, hey, you have to bring him back. So I got brought back at Tournament of Death. And it was like, we're gonna do something with you. All right. So I did Tournament of Death and nothing happened. And Danny Havoc pushed again. So I went into a feud with Danny Havoc. And then once we finished that feud, I felt like, all right, maybe it's done because they weren't trying to do anything with me, man. And I was literally one of the guys that was willing to die for them. And I did his retirement match. And that match was supposed to be my coming out party to be back in CZW and say, hey, I want to be a main event guy, whether it's deathmatch, no matter what style it is. I know I could be a main event guy there. And it didn't happen like that. I was promised stuff and it just fizzled again. And I would get brought back sporadically again. And then that's when the GCW thing with them, Nick Gage running in a cage death happened. And literally everything started fizzling there, dude. Like I think a month after I came to do a CZW show and they really had nothing for me. They were putting me in scrambles already. I was like, what are we doing? Like, I just beat Danny Havoc in his retirement match. I should be getting a proper push and it just wasn't happening. I was like, I busted my ass for over 10 years and I'm still getting pushed to the side for other people. And I felt like that was ridiculous. Like I've proven myself. But I got pushed to the side again. And then it was put to me and many other of the more deathmatch driven guys in that company in one night that we would have to choose if we wanted to do GCW or CZW, because Danny Havoc was putting my name into GCW's office like, hey, maybe you should give Alex a chance, he's really good. And they gave me a date. I took the date. CZW wasn't happy about that, and they weren't happy about the dates that the other guys took, so they gave us all an ultimatum, and we made the decision for ourselves and decided that it wasn't worth it. And literally in one night, CCW pretty much lost a lot of loyal guys to GCW.
But that's the thing, man. As an independent wrestling company, they can't put a stop to you guys earning money. And that to me is like, if you're wrestling for a major promotion and they're saying, look, we're investing millions of dollars into you, Alex Colon, then fair enough. I can understand that because they are paying all your bills. Like, you don't have anything to do it. But for an independent professional wrestler, a company should never be able to give their workers an ultimatum because you're telling their guys that they can't go out and make money. And like, are you paying the bills? Are you putting food on the table for their families? No. I mean, you are in a small amount. But, guys like yourself and other guys like, Ricky Shane Page, the Matt Tremonts, the list goes on and on. Independent professional wrestlers need to take every booking to gain exposure, to get money, to build their brand. And, to put an ultimatum on them like that, I'm not surprised that a lot of guys walked out.
Yeah. Oh, me neither. I seen it coming, man. And I tried to like, hey, this is not a good move. You don't want to take money out of people's mouths. And, people didn't listen, and that's where things kind of went. That's where you and everybody else could notice, like, once we kind of like fizzled out of the company on a regular basis, it kind of went downhill from there. They kind of didn't know what to do. They lost their identity.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, with your stuff with CZW, did anyone ever give you a reason why they weren't pushing you, or were they just saying, "Oh no, we don't have anything for you. We'll put you in this match," or was it?
There was never there. I would have people in my ear telling me certain people didn't like me, or they felt like I wasn't a good person in the back, or I would talk too much. It's like, really not that much. I was any type of person of that nature. I just think maybe people didn't think I was good enough at that time, and there was a lot of great, talented dudes. But, the CZW locker room towards the end of the few years before I quit, even the few years, it was more or less of a family environment. Everybody was just trying to use it to get somewhere. So people didn't care about each other. They were just using each other to get whatever fame or notoriety or get whatever looks they were trying to get. And with me, it was never like that. Like me and a few others, we were honestly just trying to help CZW get back to what we felt it could have been. And it just didn't work out that way, man.
Yeah, man. And like I said, CZW has had a lot of talent over the years and a lot of guys that have gone up to, WWE and AEW and major promotions. And it really has been the proving ground of professional wrestling for many, many years, that it's, the ultimate stepping stone has been CZW. with guys going into other promotions. And I just, personally, I feel that CZW, the company has just sort of dropped the ball on so many levels over the last few years. I'm a huge CZW fan, and I'm a diehard CZW fan, but the last few years, a lot of the shows can be hard to watch at times, man. And you mentioned GCW coming up. GCW is the hottest promotion going at the moment. You've just gone in and had Tournament of Survival, which you won. And, where do you see GCW as opposed to CZW on the Richter scale in years to come? Are they going to be the number one promotion on the indies, and CZW, where does that go from there?
GCW is already the number one promotion, at least in the US, and they have a bunch of notoriety internationally. So that's not even a question. To me, CZW is pretty much dead. I mean, alongside the scandals and everything DJ's kind of got himself into, which Alex keeps trying to be the guy to be like, hey, maybe you should, even when I'm not in the company. It doesn't work out that way. CZW's kind of put themselves in a position where they're almost non-existent, at least when it comes to scales or any top anything lists. But I definitely know GCW right now is the place to be, is the place to beat. So that's just where it is. GCW to me is number one indie, at least in the US. Internationally, they have a super ton of recognition. So who knows where that'll go once the doors open up.
Dude, I completely agree. I think GCW is the number one. And, you just see from the crowd reactions, the crowd numbers, people.
Dude, in Japan, I'm sorry for cutting you off. In Japan, It was like, it was nuts. It was, the last time we were there, we had a segment where it was a lot of the GCW guys and then a few of the Freedoms guys, because their roster's not that big. They do contract a few guys, but the few contracted guys they had there were in the ring, and it wasn't as many as we had. But the deafening GCW chants compared to anything else was nuts. It was almost like they were trying to be baby, and I love Freedoms. I'm not trying to downplay it, but they were trying to be babyface, and we ended up getting the pop for the babyface. So it was nuts. It was just like, how popular can a foreign promotion on someone else's turf be? It's just a crazy thought.
It is, man. And, GCW, those reactions that you're getting are very reminiscent of the early CZW days and the ECW days as well. The chanting of the initials of the company. And, as a fan watching it from, on a screen, I sit there and get excited for it, because that's the sort of shit that I pop for. When I was a kid, I loved hearing those EC dub or CZ dub, those sort of chants really sort of, as a fan watching on TV, it makes the promotion just, what I mean? Even as a fan watching on TV, you get that excitement through the screen.
Yeah.
And that's what you're seeing from CZW, from GCW, man. And I think, GC Dub, Brett Lauderdale, those guys are doing everything right to really build themselves and continue to keep that spot as a number one indie promotion in the world.
Yeah. They're building, dude, they're building the template. They're, like I said, I think they're number one. And, they broke the seal when it came to all the COVID restrictions, and they've really been on top of that, which have really been making them a standard bearer, at least when it comes to how to run a wrestling show during these times. I mean, remember when PWG was super on top? You don't really hear too much about them at this moment. GCW is the one place you hear everything about. They're really on top of things right now.
Yeah, man. And, they're bringing in the matches, and they just brought back Leo Rush, for his final wrestling match. And that was
ACH.
Dude.
ACH. So awesome.
But the thing was as well, in a world of pro wrestling where everyone is on their phones, everyone has technology to keep that a secret in this day and age. Dude, seriously?
Bro, a good, no, sorry, go ahead. If you, I was saying, he came in fully dressed, so I was like, who's that? And I literally thought it was one of the DDT Japanese guys who came over to do the thing, and then he went to another room. Let's break the fifth wall or whatever, or fourth wall. So I went to the back. So I was looking for somebody, and he had his mask off, and I was like, oh, it's Leo. He's here. All right, and turn around and leave. And then when he made his whole reveal. There's people in the crowd. Literally, I thought this dude was about to cry. I was like, wow, I didn't know it was that. Maybe I'm just used to seeing people, but I didn't think it was, dude was literally about to bawl in tears. It was nuts.
Well, I think it's like from wrestling fans, it's like they like the element of surprise. Like that's the thing. Like I was like, holy fuck, and that's where wrestling fans really sort of get behind is like being able to get worked by the promotion. And I think that they definitely worked the crowd.
It's
They
rare.
didn't know that he was going to show up, and it's very rare to, like, in the last 10 years, how easy is it for him to do?
Dude, it's
So
hard to keep secrets. I'll agree. It's super hard for you to keep anything a secret in wrestling nowadays.
oh, exactly. But guys, it is time for that time in the show where we play guess the Aussie slang. So Alex has been briefed about this. Alex, have you ever been to Australia?
No. Hopefully someday though.
Hopefully someday. Okay, so when you come to Australia, you're gonna have to understand how we talk, because Australians,
Okay.
we talk a different language. We speak English, but it's like a different language with our slang. So we're gonna go into it. Okay. All right. First word, root. I had a
Root.
good root. 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 I had a good root the other night.
Wow. Sounds like something sexual. Yeah. Good something sexual the other night.
I had a good root
Something
the other night. It
sexual.
means I had sex.
All
Yeah,
right.
I'll give you a
Okay.
point for that. Okay.
That counts.
All right. Thongs. Have you seen my thongs? Where are they? They're around here somewhere. Thongs?
Things.
No, flip flops. So you call a thong something completely different over in the US. I know that. So, all right. Hey Alex, on the way to my place, can you pick up a slab?
Meat. Steaks.
Beers. Slab, like a
Okay.
carton of beer.
That's weird. Slabs.
Yeah, we call it a slab. So,
That's strange.
hey mate, you want a tinny?
Coffee.
Well, I use the coffee cup, but no, a tinny is like a beer can.
Okay.
All right, so
You show me a coffee cup, dude. You're getting coffee.
I'm sorry, man. All right, so we're gonna go. This one's gonna be a multiple part question. Okay, so all right, so the three words I'm gonna use are servo, bottle-o. All right, yeah, and I got another one, Macca's. All right, so 3-part words. So, all right, Alex, before we go, I need to stop past the servo. Then I need
Like
to
a
go to the
Quickie Mart?
bottle-o. Then I need to swing past Macca's.
I'm
Servo.
thinking like a Quickie Mart, or a Combini.
Yeah. So all right, so a servo is like a Quickie Mart, like a service station.
Okay.
Bottle-o.
Where you get beers and stuff, like an alcohol place, yeah.
And Macca's.
Shit, I don't know, dude. Sounds like a McDonald's to me.
McDonald's.
All right, yeah, cool.
Alex, I'm fucking busting, man. Where's your dunny?
Shit. Toilet.
Got it. All right. Hey, Alex, up at this set of lights, Chucky Yui.
U-turn.
Far out, man. You're good.
People,
No one
I think
usually gets
people
that
out
one.
here say shit like that. Like, oh, check out you. Yeah, all right, U-turn.
All right. You want to come over to my house and drink some piss?
Beer.
Yep, alcohol. Far out, man. You're pretty good for someone who hasn't been to Australia, Alex. I'm digging this, man. I got to try and find some harder ones for you. All right. Would you like a bicky?
Shit, if I know a napkin or a bib. Sounds like pet shit.
A bicky's like a cookie or a biscuit.
Okay.
All right. My wife is cutting sick.
She's really sick.
No, she's really angry. She's cutting sick. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Okay.
Like, cutting sick. All right. Let's go a couple more. Oh, mate. I'm pretty chock-a-block.
Tired.
Full. So I've eaten too much.
Okay.
All right. So we'll go one or two. We'll go two more.
I feel like
no drama. no dramas, Alex.
Problems.
Yep, no problems. Hey, Alex, can you grab the esky out of my ute?
Shit, no clue.
Esky's like a cooler, so you put drinks in there, you pour ice in there, all that sort of stuff. All right, so we'll go one more. Crikey, would you look at that?
Like, damn, would you look at that?
Yeah, so you'd be element of surprise. So that's the Aussie slang game. That Alex, thanks for playing, man. But
Thank you.
Alex, before we wrap things up, where can you tell everyone where they can find you, how they can follow you, keep in contact, support you in any way?
I'm on Twitter, so just find me on Twitter, AlexCologne0139. Facebook, I don't really go on to Facebook too much, so you're better off on Twitter. I did have an Instagram for a little bit, but once COVID started, it kind of became useless for a second, so I just got rid of it. Maybe in the future, but right now Twitter's the place to get me. So AlexCologne0139 on Twitter.
There you go, guys. And look, just another special thanks to our sponsors, Wasif Championship Belts, A-Rock Designs, and Signal Studios. Also, head over to our prowrestlingteestore.com/MWA World and buy some of our amazing merch. And thank you for supporting us. Alex, thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you for everyone who tuned in to watch and ask some questions. Till next time, guys, we'll catch you on the next go around. Peace.